Victor Osimhen's camp confirmed the Manchester United swap deal, but where's that story coming from and is it credible? Manchester United's hierarchy are aligned about the treatment of Marcus Rashford as the reason he is out of the squad and effectively out of the club has been revealed. Nuno Mendes' girlfriend is packing her bags ready for sunny Manchester. Zirkzee says yes to Juventus and Antony exit talks. All this plus more in today's rundown of all the latest Manchester United news and transfer news that will keep you right up to date with everything. Welcome to Man United Review. My name's Jamie. Before we get into it, smash a like on the video. Let's jump straight into it. So let's kick off with Marcus Rashford. Now, this report came out from Laurie Whitwell in The Athletic, who is a very credible journalist. Up there, in my opinion, in one of the most credible Manchester United journalists, and is not a bullshit merchant, and only does kind of, factual, well kind of researched and, all of this kind of stuff. So he's not a bullshit merchant at all. Has come out with a really damning report revealing what's been going on behind the scenes with Marcus Rashford. So we'll run through and kind of pick it apart a little bit. So firstly, he said United had just beaten Everton 4-0 with Rashford scoring 2 of the goals in a vibrant display on Sunday, December the 1st. But after the game, Amorim heard the forward had been out in Manchester on the Friday night, November the 29th, less than 48 hours before Everton's visit to Old Trafford. The United head coach does not want his players in bars so close to games and asked Rashford about his movements. The England international assured Amorim he had been misinformed about the late night. So, firstly, Marcus Rashford's kind of, denied going out in Belfast as well, if you remember, before his face was plastered all over the papers regarding that one. But secondly, I don't have an issue. I'm just going to say this firstly. I do not have an issue with Marcus Rashford going out. I could not care less whether players go out, what they do in their social lives, or what they do outside of the football pitch, right? I genuinely couldn't care less. Is it professional? No. But, it happens. It's going to happen. Players are human beings, right? They can unwind. They can do things in their social lives. They don't just turn up to training, do their training and sit at home and consistently think about football 24/7. Nobody does that in any walk of life for their job. So I do not expect footballers to be any different, right? So I just want to throw that out there straight away. I do not care if Marcus Rashford goes out. But what I do care about is the fact that Ruben Amorim clearly does not want his players going out 48 hours before that. And he would have communicated that to the team and the squad and everybody when he introduced himself, because he would have set out his ground rules and he would have had meetings with the players and everything to say, look, this is how it's going to be. This is my rules. This is what I want you to kind of do, and so on and so forth. So Marcus would have known that. But then also, if you're going out and then you're performing bad on the pitch or in training, then I do have an issue with it. So I just want to say I have no problems with Rashford going out. Couldn't care less, being honest with you. But when you start missing games or you're turning up for training, not performing on the pitch, and it has an impact on Manchester United, then I do have an issue with it. And clearly Ruben Amorim does as well, where he does not want his players going out 2 days before a game because there's hydration issues, there's obviously recovery issues. Do you know what I mean? You need to get the right food in and stuff like that. You're a professional athlete. All of those things do make a difference. So clearly he doesn't want them doing anything apart from, toeing the line, getting the rest in, getting the recovery, eating right, and all this stuff 2 days before a game, which makes sense. But that's the kind of first part. Then he said 2 days later on Saturday, December the 14th, in the final training session before facing Manchester City the following afternoon, Rashford put in a lacklustre display at United's Carrington base, according to multiple sources, some of whom said he appeared fatigued. Claims circulated Rashford had gone out the night before on the Friday, 48 hours before the game, with accounts reaching people at United. This, however, is strenuously denied by people close to the player. Rashford is also known to feel he does not behave differently from other Premier League footballers, but faces much more scrutiny over his social life. So apparently, he's denied going out before the Everton game when Amorim's pulled him. Then he's put in a lacklustre training performance before the City game, and then rumours have come out that he was out the night before that as well, before his training performance. And that's where I have an issue with Marcus Rashford. If he is going out and he's putting in lacklustre training performances, because that's the reason why. Do you know what I mean? That's what you're paid to do. When you turn up to work, you need to give your all, regardless of what job you're doing. Do you know what I mean? And especially if you're a professional athlete and a professional footballer. So if you've had a warning by Amorim to say, I don't want you going out 2 days, denied it, and then apparently gone out again 2 days before the Manchester derby, and then trained really bad as well, then that becomes an issue. Obviously, it says on there that they deny it, strenuously denied by those close to the player. However, like I said, they denied the Belfast incident as well, and they've denied a few things beforehand. Plus, Laurie Whitwell is not the sort of journalist to put this out if he didn't trust himself. If he felt that there would be ramifications from Rashford in his camp, he would not put this story out. So this is clearly well sourced and probably factually, backed up by evidence or backed up by, statements or witnesses or whatever, because he wouldn't put this story out if he hadn't kind of got the information. So again, really damning when it comes to Marcus Rashford. Amorim's treatment of Rashford is aligned with those above him at United, namely Ineos Director of Sport Dave Brailsford, Chief Executive Omar Broad, and Technical Director Jason Wilcox. Sources report his training levels have been mixed with some good days and occasional bouts of illness. So Ruben Amorim is being backed by the hierarchy to sort this situation out, which is good. So they're all in alignment. And I don't know whether that's happened before in the past, because if you remember, there was obviously a report the other day, can't remember who it was from, someone very credible saying that Rashford's had, problems with previous managers before where they've all had a problem with him. And obviously, maybe the club weren't aligned with what they could do about it, because he's always been seen as a commercial asset to the clubs under the Glazers. So they wouldn't want to do anything to kind of harm Rashford's image, whereas obviously Ineos and stuff don't care. They want professionals doing their job on the pitch, which is way more important. So I like the fact that they're backing Amorim on this situation. There can be no doubt in his quality, but people at United talk about Rashford's attitude needing to shift to meet the standards required. And now, having turned 27 in late October, he should be setting an example for the younger players. Until Amorim and his team sense a meaningful improvement, the prospect of continued absence or a departure will remain. So Laurie makes a very valid point there around leadership. Rashford is one of our senior players who should be setting an example for the rest of the group. And if this report is to be believed, and I do believe it personally, you can make up your own minds and let me know in the comments if you do or you don't. But Laurie Whitwell is very, very credible. This is not a story that's come from The Sun or from Samuel Lucas or someone like that, for example, who I would say, take with a pinch of salt, or it sounds like freaking bullshit. Do you know what I mean? Laurie Whitwell's not like that. So if he's putting this piece out, it will be very well sourced. It will be very well. He would have spoken to Rashford's camp. He would have spoken to Man United about this before releasing this story. That's how kind of credible and meticulous he is in his kind of work. But yeah, Marcus Rashford should be he's a senior player and he should be setting an example. And if he's not, then that's part of the problem as well. And if you think back to yesterday, Amorim's kind of press conference, if you've seen it, he was questioning about the leadership at the team as well, saying we need leaders on the pitch, we need leaders in the dressing room, and more senior players need to start stepping up and performing. And Rashford, whether he likes it or not, is now a senior player who should be setting an example. But I would absolutely love your opinion on that in the comments. I've said before, there must be something else that's happened behind the scenes. It cannot just be, I refuse to believe that Rashford's that bad in training to not make any match day squad for 6 games. And clearly there is something else that has been happening behind the scenes that Amorim does not like. And it, by all accounts, once bitten, twice shy, to do it twice within a space of a few days, do you know what I mean, suggests that maybe Rashford doesn't see it as a problem. Well, he doesn't in the statement. He said he does get treated, and I do think he's right actually in the statement, just going back to that, where he says that he gets treated differently to other Premier League players. I agree with that. I totally think that he does. And as I mentioned, I don't personally have a problem with him going out. No issues, no dramas whatsoever. But if you're told specifically not 48 hours before a game, and then you do it, and then you do it again within 48 hours of, do you know what I mean? It just not a good look. But I'd love your opinions. Let me know what you think about that in the comments. And then sticking with Rashford, the situation between Ruben Amorim and Rashford is still not resolved. He can leave the club in January. Fabrizio Romano confirming that, if we get an offer or a deal or something that's suitable for the club and for Rashford, then, he can still leave in January. It's just going to be a difficult deal to do because of his wages and obviously things like this now. But let me know what you think about that in the comments. Now, one of the other naughty boys that got dropped from the Manchester derby was Garnacho. So this is the following that's come out regarding his situation, saying Alejandro Garnacho was axed from the Manchester squad over a show of dissent towards head coach Ruben Amorim. It has emerged. Mail Sport understands that Argentina winger appeared to turn his back on Amorim and walk away while the United boss was giving him instructions on the touchline before the game. Before he came on against Victoria Pleasant in the Europa League 3 days before the derby, representatives for the 20-year-old player denied that he was being disrespectful and put it down to a misunderstanding. United declined to comment, but sources insist there is no rift between the two and Garnacho has not been frozen out. However, they acknowledge that Amorim has set exacting standards for the players since taking over. So Chris Wheeler kind of confirmed maybe a bit of miscommunication or misunderstanding between Garnacho and Amorim that maybe he took offence to. I mean, to be fair, if you're giving someone your kind of instructions and what you want to do with them on the pitch when they're coming on as a substitution, they turn their back and walk away, you could probably see why Amorim felt a little bit disrespected by that. But again, is that something that you should be dropped from an entire match day squad for? Obviously, Amorim thinks that it is. If that story's to be believed, Amorim thinks that it's a big enough deal to not make the next match day squad. But clearly, something's been resolved there because, yes, Garnacho has not been starting games, but that's probably because I don't necessarily think he suits the system so far. But yeah, at least he's in the squad. He's making appearances and stuff. So but let me know what you think about that in the comments. Now let's go through the transfer news. So Victor Osimhen's camp confirms Man United swap deal. Victor will move. He may wear the red colours in England. There are moves already, and it is what he wants. Now that was, I don't know the credibility of that source, right? But that was reposted all over social media by multiple credible accounts and aggregator accounts, Man United accounts, right? So I looked into it. Now that kind of, the paper's NG is a Nigerian news outlet with 1,000 followers, and I don't think that's a credible source personally. Like, I do not know every news outlet in the world and never claim to, never will know, right? But sometimes when I look at a story, I'll check to see, you know, where it's coming from and do a little bit of homework and research. And if I check on it and they've got like 6 million followers, I'm like, okay, well, that might be a credible source because you don't get that many followers if you're crap or you're not good at your kind of job. Do you know what I mean? To have that kind of following, then you've got to be fairly decent and fairly good at your kind of job. That one's got 1,000 followers at the time of recording this. It was like 1,100 at the time of recording this video. So I don't believe it. I genuinely don't believe it. I think if Victor Osimhen's camp had come out with comments like that, Romano, Ornstein, Laurie Whitwell, you know, anybody with credibility would have been all over that like a rash. For some kind of relatively unknown Nigerian paper with 1,000 Twitter followers to come out with that comment and it not to be picked up by anybody else, I'm calling BS on. I'm just being honest. I might be wrong, but you know, and he could be on about Liverpool as well or Arsenal wearing the red colours. But yeah, I don't trust the credibility is what I would say with that story. So I would take it with a pinch of salt. But it's on screen. You can go and do your own research and find out for yourselves. Let me know though what you think about that in the comments. And then Goal kind of confirmed the stories that we've been bringing over the last couple of days. Manchester United plan to offer Marcus Rashford to Napoli in an exchange deal for Victor Osimhen. A bit late to the party. That news was, already kind of came out. So I think they're just kind of jumping on the story and a little bit kind of delayed. But let's talk about Mendes. So we all know we need a left back desperately. I hope Man United know that we need a left back and are trying to bring one in. The most heavily linked one is Nuno Mendes. Nuno Mendes does not plan to sign a new contract with PSG at this stage. Manchester United is still monitoring his situation closely and informed about everything. Florian Plettenberg, the kind of story, just to recap on that, is that if he refuses the contract with PSG, then they may look to sell him because obviously his value is going to decrease in the summer with him only having 18 months left on his contract. That will go down to 12 months in the summer and that decreases your value. So if he kind of says, look, I'm not signing a new contract, then potentially they may look to sell him. At the moment, we've made a contract offer, which is more than what PSG have offered, but whether that's negotiation tactics or not, we don't know. But there is no smoke without fire regarding Mendes. I do think that because it was a credible source that linked the whole kind of stories in the first place. So I do think that, but it's just a case of waiting to see if we can get a deal done, or Mendes might just as easily sign for PSG if they offer him a higher wage or more money or a better contract. So wait and see. Definitely a player of interest though, and there is no smoke without fire with Mendes. And then Nuno Mendes is ready to join Manchester United. His girlfriend lives in Portugal, but Mendes wants her to join him in Manchester, and she is already thinking about packing her bags to sunny Manchester. Now, that is, again, it says reposted by some credible sources, is what I would say. They're a fairly decent Portuguese outlet, but again, I'd want to see a bit more credibility before that story is to be believed. But yeah, no smoke without fire regarding Mendes. They're the updates on that, because I know a lot of you want to know what's happening with the left-back situation. Now, one of the other players that's been linked with a January exit, Joshua Zirkzee. Joshua Zirkzee has said yes to joining Juventus. That's all that's left is a deal to be made with Manchester United. Talks continued yesterday. Now, that came from Gazzetta. They're actually a decent Italian outlet. A little bit like yesterday when it was Alfredo Padula and Damasio, I think it was, that were kind of, you know, ramping up the interest or ramping up the stories regarding Zirkzee. So that's a decent kind of source. You know, the talk is a loan, but United want an obligation to buy at the minimum, or they want a permanent exit of Zirkzee. That's going to leave us massively light up front, though. You know, so we must be doing, like, if we get rid of Zirkzee and then Antony and then Rashford, I said this yesterday, that we've got to bring in some forwards. You can't just sell all your forwards when we can't score goals anyway in the first place. Do you know what I mean? That's as stupid as not getting a left back this transfer window. It just makes no sense. So, you know, maybe they are looking to bring players in or promote from the youth or whatever. But again, it would be a little bit concerning to loan Zirkzee and not get a replacement in. But then does that help us to get players in January if it's a loan? It will help us in the summer with an obligation to buy. But does it really help us massively this transfer window? I'm not so sure, but we'll keep an eye on it for you. Let me know what you think in the comments. And a player I just mentioned there, so Manchester United have started to open the door for the possible exit of Antony this month. It came from Fabrizio Romano. Talk is, obviously, there's been a few stories over the last few days regarding Antony going. Potentially that would be a loan because he's high wages and obviously he's not been performing very well. So I don't blame teams for wanting to loan Antony because there is a risk factor involved in there. But Romano confirming that, yeah, we are starting to look at the possibility of removing him this month. Remember, Romano did an interview about a week ago with his agent, where his agent was like, yeah, if United give us the go-ahead, then we've got options on the table. So we'll need to wait and see what happens regarding that. And the final story I've got for you is regarding Zion Suzuki. So Zion Suzuki is still on Manchester United's radar. Bayern Munich are also interested in Suzuki. The race will happen with United this summer. Now, that came from a Japanese outlet. I don't know the credibility, but reposted by some decent places. You know, we were massively linked with him. For those who remember when we signed Onana, it was going to be Onana and Suzuki coming in as like the 1 and 2 because they seen Suzuki as like competition for Onana. But he decided, I think we actually made a bid for him as well, if I remember rightly. But he decided not to come because he wanted to go away and be a number 1. 22 years old, now plays for Parma. So could be one that we might reignite the interest and bringing him in, because clearly he's a player that's scouted and liked by people at the club. Whether those people, though, were Amorim, because that was under Ten Hag, so whether there's a total change in style we're looking for now with Amorim, who knows? But keep an eye on it. It'll be one for the summer anyway. But let me know what you think about that in the comments. Let me know what you think about all the other topics discussed in today's video, because that is you all up to date with the latest Manchester United news and transfer news. Smash a like on the video on your way out. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. See you in the next one.